Hey guys, Man here for another deck profile, and as you can see, we are looking at basically Dorugoramon. This deck actually got a bit of support last set in BT16 with the new collusion stuff, which was really good actually, but it was just kind of lacking when compared to like Imperial and like trying to beat Nume basically because it was just kind of struggling. Hence why it barely got any tops. But with BT17, we finally have the new support, and at this point, pre-release is basically done. So I've managed to get basically all the new support for this deck, and it is insane. This is, as you can see from the title, we are focusing on the black version because it is the control version. I will be doing a purple version, a purple deck profile for this because that version is basically a completely different deck because it focuses on specifically aggro. But that's not to say that this deck doesn't have aggro either. This deck can go off really hard, and especially the fact that it can control your opponent, their board basically for like basically until they lose, but because this deck has access to not only blocker but also alliance and reboot through mind link, and it technically also has jamming included if you also include the old Marvin. But my build doesn't really run at the moment. I do want to see if I can incorporate at one point, but at this moment we're only running like certain ones to give blocker, alliance, and reboot. So yeah, but like the deck basically can use for anybody that had an Alphamon deck, you basically just take all the parts from that, like or not all the parts, but most of them, and then just slot in the new stuff, and you basically have the same exact deck, except that instead of Alphamon doing the Digivolving, it's Dorugoramon doing the Digivolving, and also doing Collusion at the same time and deleting stuff. So you basically are guaranteed to just delete stuff during that turn, no matter what. So it's really strong, honestly. Like you also have, it's also the only consistent deck in the format that has access to Tamer deletion, which is really crucial, especially in BT17 against hybrids. It's honestly, I think, the reason why this deck even saw play in BT17 and why it even like topped is because it has a way to take out Kojis, it has ways to take out Takuyas, like it has ways to take out the Daiken basically. So once you destroy those, they basically can't do much half the time, which is honestly like a lot of decks just depending on Tamers. It's basically back to hybrid format, which a lot of people did not like. So yeah, but anyway, let's actually get into the deck profile. I only run 4 eggs, and that is specifically the 4 Dorymons. I've had these AAs for like the longest time since they basically came out because I managed to trade for them back then, and I've just been holding on to them specifically for like Machine Dramon, but I haven't really used them in a while. But yeah, this Dorymon is basically the best egg because you're always going to be mind linking every turn underneath this just to basically get an extra draw, which is really good. But at the same time, it potentially can deck you out. The only time I've genuinely lost with this deck is because of deck out. Which is why we actually run a very specific level 7 to help us basically recycle our deck. This card is just really good. It like this deck works so perfect with this. Like everything is built about basically tucking stuff underneath. So mind linking just automatically triggers everything, which is really good for this deck. But yeah, we run the 4 eggs because this basically helps us draw cards, and of course, just it's a really good egg. For level 3s, we run very specific one, but we run 3 different versions of it. We run first the 4 copies of the Doraemon from BT16. This guy is just really, really busted in this format, mainly because of his start of main phase effect. Specifically for those that do not know what this does, start of main phase by placing 1 Kosuke Kisakata from your hand as this Digimon's bottom source. Until the end of your opponent's turn, this Digimon cannot leave the battle area other than by deletion. So it forces them to play into into the play style of this deck, which is you want to die so that you can evolve into your Death-X forms. So this actually just leaving out a normal Dorugoramon or a normal Doru, or specifically a normal Dorugora or a Dorugray specifically will hurt them in the process because you basically can't leave the field. So you just go, oh, okay, I'm just going to do it, and then you still have a guy for next turn, and then you just destroy them next turn by popping stuff. So you need to run 4 copies of this, especially if you're running the black build like I am here, because it's just the fact that it can block bouncing. Yeah, it can't block source stripping, but with this, you basically don't really have to worry about Imperial doing their thing on your turn, because no matter what, you're still swinging through them. And even if you don't swing through them, you're going to, like, let's say the best example is you swing in with Dorugoramon, and they strip all your sources using like Paladin mode, right? Well, you go, oh, okay, well, I'm still swinging into your guy because I forced collision. Okay, well, I'm still swinging in, and oh no, he's gonna die. Oh, sorry, he's actually gonna Digivolve into Death-X-Dorugoramon and Digivolve and gain back a overflow of 5? Or actually, yeah, for 5. So then I'm like, oh, I have 5 memory now, and now I can keep going and hurt you even more. And at the same time, that also like sets it up so that once he digivolves, he deletes the lowest cost, and by that point, if he's digivolved by 3, he's a XVmon or a Stingmon, so it'll die. But yeah, we'll get to that once we get to level 6s. We also run 4 of the Dorumons. This Dorugamon is really solid. It's basically the black X antibody Dex version of Flamemon from Red Hybrid, because you just discard 1 card with X antibody, any card with X antibody in its trait, and you get to draw 2. So you can even discard the Protoform, because we do run Protoform in here. The Protoform does have X antibody as its trait, so you can also discard that, and you get to draw 2. So you have to run at least 4 copies of this, but at the same time, you have to be very careful with when you discard and how much you discard, because potentially you can deck out, as I mentioned before. Then we run 3 of the Dorumons from BT7, because this one is just one of our main searchers, obviously, alongside this. But also the fact is that when we tuck something underneath, its inherit will basically give us 1 memory. So that actually helps us go from like 2 to 3, and then we can digivolve into our Doru Gray. So it's actually really important to run at least 3 copies because of that inherit. Along with that, as I mentioned, it does help us search stuff, but it does whiff on the Tamer. But for anybody that's honestly played this deck, you know that you're going to be breaking into like all your Kosuke's in hand, so you don't really have to worry about that, honestly. Like, I've never, like, in all the testing I've done with this deck, I've never once actually not seen Kosuke. It is actually kind of bonkers that is how weird the deck is, but that's just how it works. But yeah, that's basically all the rookies we run. As you can see, we only run 11 rookies, but it's a pretty solid number because you consistently will see them. And unlike Greymon, surprisingly, you don't brick as much. Even with a really, really bricky hand, like, I've been able to brick out of it and just go off around like turn 4 maybe. And by that, I'm already pretty much set up with trainings and cool boys and other tamers, so I'm basically set. But yeah, that's basically all for the rookies. For level 4s, we run, of course, 4 of the new Dorugoramon, or Dorugamon specifically. This guy is really good. Like, the fact that he can evolve on anything SOC or Dorumon for 2 cost is still very strong. Then he has Collusion, of course, but the main thing is that you want to activate his on play or when digivolving, which is basically where you can discard a card to draw a card, and then by doing that, if it has a Tamer underneath, it gets to force an attack. So it's basically like an Edamon. It forces them to attack at the start of their main phase. So if they have like a rookie that they wanted to evolve, that's not happening because it's swinging in and he's going to block it. Or if you target a bigger guy, you can force it and then you can block this and then digivolve him into the X form so that you can get more draw off that. But yeah, and then all turns, of course, it does give your guy plus 1,000, and it does seem like that's a small amount, but that does come in handy sometimes and can help you boost over certain things. Especially with Alliance, you can actually boost up, like, if you play this back out with Alliance somehow, you're going to be giving your guy at least plus 5,000, putting him at least at 18,000, and if you have the inherit of this at the same time along with the new Doru's inherit, which is just plus 1,000, you're basically going to be going at least 20,000 swinging, which is really strong. Like, it can breach over a lot of Digimon, especially one of the worst matchups for this deck, which is Tyrant, because you can't basically punch through unless you get Alliance. Then we have, of course, we're running 2 of the Death-X-Dorugoramon. The new one is actually really good as well because of the trash effect specifically. Like, all the new Death-X have this new effect where all turns when one of your specific Digimon, and in this case Dorugamon, would be deleted by digivolving it into this card from the trash, without paying the cost, you get to prevent that deletion. And then when digivolving, you get to trash one card in your hand and then draw one. And if it has Dorugoramon in its sources, it can delete one of your opponent's Digimon with play cost of 4 or less. And this one is probably the more crucial one because it does give you reboot, which in conjunction with a blocker inherit can basically help you block a lot of things or force a digivolve into Dex-Doru. So you have to run at least 2 copies. I know some builds are running 3, maybe like a full set of 4, but I feel 2 because I'm also running 2 of the old one as well. So you're running 4 and 4 already with this. So pretty solid. Like this old one is still amazing. The fact that you get an extra memory by just discarding is really strong, especially if you have X antibody or a Death-X underneath, basically, or if you have the Darugo, it's still really solid. So I highly recommend doing a split like this. Aside from that, this does give blocker retaliation as long as you have the guy, the Dorugoramon underneath. So actually forcing the fact that he can't die but your opponent will die is actually really cool because then you go, oh, sorry, but he has retaliation, so sorry, your guy's dead. But it will, and it can potentially force them to use their protection, which is also really good. So I feel running 4 and 4 feels pretty good. I honestly don't run any more than these, so it's like I run exactly the 8. I know that might be like, oh, you could run probably 2 more, but to streamline this deck, I actually did take out 2 of the SOC Tyrannomon. That one just didn't really work well in the deck because it did whiff on a few things, and the fact that it's like purple-red means we can't really search it out that easily. We have to just kind of draw into it and hard play it, which really sucks. You can play it off of the effect of the Doru Greys, but I really don't like doing it that way. I'd rather just not even include it because we already have a lot of search power and a lot of draw power. As you can see, like almost every one of these has a draw effect, so you're going to be drawing a lot. For level 5s, we only run 1, but specifically different versions of him. We're running 4 of the Doru Greys, also from BT17, because this one has collusion. And of course, all turns, it has a really busted all turns effect where whenever you switch a target, or a target is switched, it gets to digivolve into a Digimon with the Beast Dragon, Undead, or SOC trait in its hand without paying the cost. So they already planned ahead because this basically can turn into Dex or an SOC or a Beast Dragon. So it's just so you will be turning into Dorugoramon and just checking them in the process. And after you delete something, this effect will trigger and the all turns is basically once per turn. When this Digimon deletes another Digimon, it doesn't matter by battle or anything. It just says when it deletes something. You may play 1 card with the X antibody or SOC trait and a play cost of 5 or less from the trash without paying the cost. So you want to do that and then immediately alliance it to swing in. And then you can Digivolve the other guy. So really strong. And then we run 2 of the new Dex-Dorugoramon. This one is honestly also just as good. The fact that it can digivolve from trash if this Dorugoramon were to die is really powerful because when digivolving he can pop something's 6 cost or less. So if they were planning to swing for a game with a rookie, well guess what? It's dead. So it can't really do anything at that point. So really cool. And then it also has an end of attack where you can choose to delete this guy to purposely digivolve him up into the Dex-Doru to de-digivolve him. So you actually force them to do it, which is really cool. And the cool thing is that the effect specifically says with a Digimon with as high or lower a level as that Digimon specifically. So you get to basically delete, you can actually choose specifically a high level, delete one of your chosen Digimon. Yeah, no, so if you're already a level 6 and they have a level 6, you basically purposely target it, and then you go, okay. But even then, it's like, you don't have to force this, because if you swing into a bigger guy, you just go, okay, cool, I'm going to turn in Dex-Doru and de-digivolve him. So, pretty strong, honestly. Then we run, of course, the 1 Doru Grey from BT7 because this protects us from DP reduction and basically being deleted for the turn. And, of course, it gives us that extra security check, which we do need in this deck. So, really solid. We only run the 7 level 5s, but you see these guys actually very consistently. With the fact that the deck is so streamlined, you will be seeing these parts all the time. Then for level 6s, of course, we are running the Dorugoramon. As I mentioned, this guy has collusion, and when digivolving, if a Tamer card is with a Tamer card with the SOC trait is in this guy's sources, you get to delete one of your opponent's unsuspended Digimon or Tamers, which is really, really strong. And the cool thing is that you can still do that with AG, which is really nice. But sometimes you don't get the deletion because, as I mentioned before, I am running a different tamer technically. But yeah, no, this card is just really cool. The fact that it has access to literal Digimon or Tamer deletion is really strong because there is nothing in this game at the current moment that protects Tamers aside from maybe Shine. But Shine isn't really as relevant in the meta at this moment, so kind of doesn't really matter as much. The best part is that this is perfect for taking on Imperial because you can just pop their Daiken and it slows them down for another turn or two, which can essentially get you to game. Um, Also, all turns when another Digimon is deleted, you may unsuspend this guy. So you can go, okay, I deleted your guy. Okay, he's gonna go in for another swing. So if you're already swinging into a guy and you're piercing through with the tamer like Kosuke, you're gonna get an extra check. So you're guaranteed 2 checks no matter what, which is really strong. And yeah, he's a really big body. He's 12,000, and with the inherents and alliance, he can go way beyond that. So it's really powerful. Then, of course, for the other level 6, we run 3 of the new Death-X-Dorugoramon. This guy is busted. Like he's so good this format, and it's kind of funny because he is a very simple card because he can digivolve on top of this guy for 2 cost. Cool. But he has the trash effect where all turns when one of your Dorugoramon would be deleted by digivolving into this guy. So if this guy dies, he can go, oh, I'm going to Death-X evolve into this guy, and then when digivolving, he just gets to de-digivolve by 3 by default because this ends in a period right here in the sentence. So de-digivolve one of your opponent's Digimon by 3. So that's it, done with that sentence. And then if Dorugoramon is in this guy's sources, and this guy digivolved by digivolving from the trash, you get to delete all of their lowest costs. So basically, if you de-digivolved, like let's say an Imperial, and you basically just kill their stack at that point, and they can't recover from that because it's an XVmon or whatever it is. Because digivolve by 3 is just enough that it will actually go past Pyodramon, even if they have a stack, unless they really did like 2 aces on top somehow, and it turns back into Pyodra, then you might be in a little bit of trouble. But even then, it's kind of weird because then they just gave you a -9 overflow. So you go, okay, cool. And then you just do it again because we have an option card in this deck that actually lets us digivolve by trashing cards. But yeah, no. And then all turns, he has the same effect as Dorugoramon, where when he deletes something, he gets to unsuspend. So if you swung twice with this, then you get to swing with a 3rd time if he dies on that 2nd check. And then you go, okay, I'm going to swing again. And then if you have Alliance, you're basically clinching the game at that point, which is really crazy. That's all the level 6s we run. You really don't need to run that many of these guys. You see them very consistently. I know some builds do run 4 of this guy, but I feel 3 is already a pretty solid number, and most builds do tend to go for 3 because then it's like a split of 3-3. So actually not too bad. Then for level 7s, we only run 1, and this is the one I was mentioning that helps us recycle the deck. Oryuken is still very solid in this deck, and yes, you are evolving this for 2, but after de-digivolving an ace, you basically have enough memory to just not care at that point. And the best part is that you can digivolve this and then recycle all the stuff underneath this one stack back into your deck, and then you go, I'm also going to delete all of your opponent's Digimon with the highest play cost. So if you didn't kill that Pyodramon, or you de-digivolved that Pyodra and popped it, and it's now an XV, this is now killing their XV and Sting. So you follow it up with the Oryuken, and you basically win the game because at that point you're swinging for so many checks that you're basically going to win. But yeah, you run 1 of this mainly to recycle the deck. That's basically all the Digimon in the deck so far. For options, we run 4 of the defense trainings because we need to search. Even though we do have 2 searchers here, it doesn't really hurt to run 4 of these because trainings are still very solid, and of course they give you a free Evo into Dorogora. I highly recommend though, if you do play this card and you're facing against Imperial, do not digivolve this outside of raising. Do it in raising and then start doing effects to digivolve, because you don't actually really even need to go into the place, because you can digivolve into this one for free for 0, and then you gain memory and it's not going to trigger Imperial. Then you go into Doro Gray and then you digivolve into this again, and then you go, okay, cool, and then you swing in and then you force an evolution into the Dorugoramon, which will technically trigger before them, so you get to pop their Imperial before that. Or technically, actually no, it will resolve differently, so you have to be very careful. You have to go in with the Dorumon specifically, with the Kosuke, so that way he can't be bounced. his sources will get stripped, but it will force a Digivolution from trash, which will de-digivolve their guy. So if they Paladin mode you, they just gave you 5 memory because you're about to de-digivolve them because you just forced them to block, and your guy will be dying. And Dex is already in the trash. They are eating that -5, and you're going to be killing their guy in the process. So it's actually good if you kind of taunt them into using Paladin mode on you. If it's against fighter mode, it is not happening because this stack can get bigger than a Jogre stack sometimes. So if they don't have the enough in their stat, you can actually beat out their fighter mode's effect, which is actually hilarious because that was like one of the best parts about fighter mode Ace, that it could just bounce something. But especially with Dorugoramon underneath with the Kosuke effect active, they basically can't touch you. They just go, oh crap, and then and your guy dies, and then DG evolves them, and then you get that -4 or -5 off them. So it's really powerful. Like, this deck has a really good counter against it, but only if you play it correctly. This deck is one of the hardest control decks to play currently, so you have to be very careful and time things very properly. Anyway, we also play one Black Memory Boost. You don't really need more than one, honestly, because you're mainly just going through the trainings, and you're already drawing enough from your evolutions that you genuinely don't need to dig that much. It's honestly why I reduced it to 1, because I was, as I mentioned, decking out because of it, so just 1 is already plenty. Then we run 2 Metal Impulses. This card is mainly in the deck specifically for Tyrant, because Tyrant is probably the only bad matchup we really have because their Digimon are not affected by our effects. So this basically goes, I'm going to de-digivolve it by 3 because it de-digivolves for each card you trash. So you trash 3 cards, set up your trash, and then you pop their Tyrant. And you can pass turn by doing that too. So you basically just go, yeah, no, get that out of here. And then you basically get to set up regardless, which is really nice. And the same effect triggers while if they hit this insecurity. So if they swing in with a Tyrant and they do this, they basically lose their Tyrant in the process, which is really strong. So we run 2 of these just in case. And against a lot of other decks, it also does hurt them a bit. So 2 is good. Then the last option we run is 2 Protoforms. I opted to run this instead of the X because the fact that of course the X lets us digivolve, obviously, but the thing is that with this you can actually digivolve into this Dorogora for only 2 cost, and the cool thing is that even if it were to die or you mess up and you basically lose the stack anyway, you still get back at least one of the pieces. So if you already have the full combo in hand, you can just go, oh, I'm just going to rebuild it in raising, and then this goes into your security. So you're going to be getting this anyway, and you're going to be getting a reduced evolution next turn anyway. So it's really strong. So I highly recommend using these 2. Or you can do a split of this and the old X antibody. Both of them are really good, but I like this now specifically for this deck because this deck does like to basically attempt to kill itself half the time, because that's the whole game plan, is to make yourself make your Digimon basically try to punch in and have him die so that he can evolve into his Death-X forms. So this is actually crucial for that, because then if it were to actually physically, like the board, like if it were to be fully deleted and go to the trash, you can still get back some parts to reuse, which is really nice. That's basically all for the options. For Tamers, obviously this being a SOC Doru deck, we are running 4 of the Kosuke's from BT17. This guy is just really cracked. It's honestly why I ended up spending the money to buy the AAs for him, because he's really good. A, he's a memory setter. B, he can mind link with anything with SOC or X antibody. B, he gives piercing and blocker. And then, yeah, the fact that fourth, or also, is that he gets to mind link and give you an extra draw through this effect. So you are always guaranteed to get the effect off for this and this if it's in the source. So it's really good. Like, he is literally the best tamer in the deck. And of course, in conjunction with this new Dorugoramon from BT16, you can make your guy basically impossible to remove for a lot of decks, and you basically force them to play into your playstyle, which is you want to get deleted and you want to trigger evolutions. So really strong. As I mentioned before, I did used to play. I did play specifically a different tamer. Specifically, it was the Yulin. But as I was actually filming this, I realized that this card actually doesn't really work with the decks here or this Dorogora, because it specifically states Tamers with SOC in their trait, and this is not. This is a Digipolice one. So it's not honestly as good. Like the only reason I even ran this specifically was because it gives you reboot. But the problem is that it doesn't really work with the effects. So I decided to take it out and actually go for specifically just two Codecracker Fangs. You might be wondering, why am I running this instead of the other AG? Because a lot of builds are running the old AG. Mainly because, I mean, yeah, we can get that extra memory, but honestly, I'd rather just be set at 3 always. Because a lot of the test matches I did, I would just hard play this on like turn 1, and then I would just always be at 3 memory. So they could never stop me from doing that. And then, of course, this being SOC, you can just link it, and then it gains alliance and blocker. So you basically don't get the piercing, but you gain the alliance, so it's still pretty decent no matter what. So I really like this actually works better because of the fact that it's SOC. So yeah, so we run like 6 SOC Tamers, so we're always guaranteed to be able to mind link and just keep going. Then the last card in the deck is, of course, 2 Cool Boys, because this deck being an X antibody deck, we can basically search everything in the deck except for the options, these options specifically, because it can search this at least, which is really nice. Originally, I was running 3 copies of this, but but the thing is that you don't want to be breaking into Cool Boy. I mean, yes, it's nice to search the cards, but at the same time, as I mentioned, it does whiff on certain things. Um, so it's not as good, but at the same time, you don't really have the room in the deck to fit more, especially with how the lines are now. But so far, the deck feels really good. Like this deck, it feels like I'm playing Imperial, but black colored, basically. Like, I'm not geogressing, but I'm drawing so many cards in the process, and I'm gaining so much memory to do my stuff that I just basically de-digivolve and wipe them every turn if I can set up the stack again, which I usually do because of Protoform. And then along with that, the search power in this deck is really strong. We have literally like 4 different search cards, or 5 different search cards if you count the Cool Boy, the Memory Boost, the Trainings, and the 2 Dorus. We have enough searching that we're not really starved for it like a lot of other decks. And as you can see, also the fact is that we are not running Ukos. The original build that I found, or the original build that I basically made, included 3 Ukos instead of these Dorus. But at the same time, you don't want to see them because they're white colored rookies that don't allow you to evolve, which really sucks. And I really didn't like that. So I switched back over to this, and yeah, you would whiff on the Kosuke, but it's whatever because we still get a part to build our stack, which is really nice. Like this is a stack deck in all tradition, but at the same time, it's a very, very powerful control deck because of the de-digivolving. We have immunity to DP reduction. We have immunity to bouncing. We can de-digivolve them all day. We force them to delete us. We have ways to counter stuff like Tyrant, which is like an invulnerable thing basically, which really sucks sometimes. And at the same time, we also draw and gain memory. So this deck is really strong, but at the same time, as I mentioned previously, this is a very, very hard control deck. A lot of people are calling this the hardest deck in the format, mainly because you have to time. There's a lot of micromanaging. Like you have to know when and what part to pull. When you look at your searches, you have to take a good long look to make sure you're grabbing the right piece that will help you set up, especially against your matchup. Like for example, if you're playing against anything that DP reduces, if you see this, you have to go into this. You don't want to be doing collusion. You want to be setting up this so that you can become immune to DP reduction, which will then help you kind of pop their stuff. Because most of the time, yellow is setting up Tamers to do their thing. So if you can pop their Tamers, they basically can't do stuff. And if they can't DP reduce you, they basically can't kill your guy. And then if they set up anything, you just collusion them and kill it and keep doing that until they lose. Against decks that specifically like to bounce, you have the Doru. So you wait in raising to basically set up everything. You play trainings, you play the Tamers, you play everything except for the Kosuke. And then once you push this out, you go into Kosuke, you digivolve for like free with the trainings. Then you just go up into the stack and just pop their stuff, digivolve it, and just keep going and punching. But at the same time, you have to be very careful. And then, as I mentioned, you have to be very careful about not decking out because you draw so much in this deck now that you actually do need or you can to actually recycle stuff for you. If I could, I would honestly run a second one because that way I can keep recycling even if Alphamon dies. And then along with that, if my sack dies, I can do another or you can and just keep recycling my deck until I basically beat them. because by that point you should have at least done a decent amount of damage to them, and you should have been able to go for game. There was actually a test match against my friend who was playing Omni where I actually had 2 Dex-Doru stacks with 2 protoforms underneath. And the only reason I couldn't win it is because I couldn't delete his Metal Garurumon off the board, which allowed him to blast Evo into his Omni, which bottom decked both my guys basically. But if I had Alphamon, I would have been able to pop it, gain back memory, and swung for 2 checks. And he only had 1 security left. So that would have been game if I had had the Oryuken. So you have to be very careful about when you time stuff. You can't just go burr. You have to be very careful about what you do. This looks like a go burr deck, but it is not. It is very technical. But yeah, aside from that, this deck is really fun. It's very, very fast. People are saying, most people I know, especially in the comments, are gonna be like, oh, what about the purple version? Yeah, no, the purple version, we will be making a video about the purple version as well. It is very fast, it's very aggro, but it lacks one thing: protection. And you need the protection to specifically survive. And yes, I know they run analog boys, they run protoforms, they run like stuff to mitigate that. But at the same time, it's also purple. So there is also a potential for trashing and discarding your deck too fast to the point where you might deck out. I've seen Fenrir Luga like almost deck out every time when it tries to OTK me. So this deck has a way to mitigate that, compared to purple, where purple has to keep drawing, it has to keep digivolving, it has to keep going as fast as possible to keep cycling. But this deck can cycle without having to rush everything, which is really nice. Like, there was also another match that I did where I basically just I waited in raising, I set up everything, and I was at 0 security, and I was going to lose the game next turn. I push out the Doru, and I just wipe his board, I destroy it, I kill his Tamers, everything. I just make it so he basically can't come back from it, and I even leave him at 1 memory in the process. So he basically cannot recover from it. And the fact that this deck can do that is insane. Is basically like playing a black version of Mirage sometimes. If you do it that way, you can do it a lot of different ways. As I mentioned, you can do it in raising, you can just go for it, but it's like, but at the same time, you have to be very careful. But anyway, I keep rambling about that, but I have to really stress that you have to be very you have to study this deck. You have to research it. You have to do like what I did with Machine Dramon, where I spent like a whole week or two just looking at each card, figuring what they do and what they bring to the deck, just understanding every single card so that you know when and where you need everything and what to do in specific situations when you don't have those parts. So yeah. Anyway, I've made this video way too long at this point. It's already at like 30 minutes, but thanks for watching, guys. Seriously. As usual, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought of the deck, and I'll see you guys next time for the next deck profile, which will be the purple version, because I'm still waiting on my Lugas. Shout out to my friend. I still need those Lugas, and I'm still waiting on them. So, yeah.